Welcome to Learn IT Courses Online. We're glad that you're joining us on this session. As we've mentioned in the prerequisites of this class that we've covered, that regardless of the kind of sector that the business is in, whether it's retail or marketing, telemarketing, food and restaurants, automotive, whatever the industry might be, the applications might be different. So the front end could be in .NET, it could be in Java, the back end, the servers, the hardware could be different, whether the OS is Linux or Unix. Those might all differ, but the one thing that all businesses have in common is they all need the data. They need the data about their information, about their inventory, about their sales, about their expenses, about their employees. Data, data, data. It always comes back to data. And that's why we have a spiral of interrelated database jobs. They all kind of spiral together. They're all kind of related. Which covers things such as DBA, database administration or administrator, data analyst, reports writer, business intelligence, ETL specialist. And again, the terminology might differ a little bit. It could be ETL developer or SQL writer or SQL developer, all of which goes back to what we've mentioned in the prerequisites again, which is the introduction to database administration and or the introduction to SQL or the SQL language. It's kind of a layer of things. At the center, we do have our information, our data, our table, or set of tables, which we communicate through, going to the block a little bit upper to the left, our SQL, then our database design, security, performance, high availability, and everything up that builds upwards is more of the database administration part of things. On the right side, we do have the reports, and that is, yes, we do have the data and it's well maintained. But now we need to make some business decisions based on that. And that is why we need reports, and the reports could be all fancy and graphs and charts and numbers and aggregated data. But there's another piece which is very important, and that's our focus that we're introducing today, and that is ETL. What is ETL? ETL is short for extraction, transformation, and loading. In very simple terms, we have what's called a data source, and we have what's called a data destination. And then ETL is a tool that moves data from A to B. To be a little bit more specific, though, there's 3 steps to it. Step number 1 is where I have a source. And that source could be any kind of a file system or a database. More than likely, for this purpose, we'll call it an Excel sheet, or a file that is saved as a CSV, a comma separated or comma delimited file. And I would like to load it into my destination, which could be an Oracle database, a SQL Server database, or maybe another file system or database system. Sometimes, however, in the middle, the data doesn't just move from A to B. Sometimes we need to do some transformation, and there's different examples of transformation. For instance, in my Excel sheet, I have the first name in a column, and I have the last name in another column. In the destination, however, I have a full name column. So transformation, an example of transformation is where I merge column A, which is first name, and column B, which is last name, on the source. So when I load it into the destination, they go into one column, which is full name. How would I use ETL in an actual work scenario? So we're going to look at an example, and then we're going to keep building on it and building on it with different scenarios in real life and different businesses, so that we can have a good imagination. Again, we at Learn IT Courses Online are very interested on not just learning the subject, but being able to apply it into a workplace, or be able to have those scenarios so that we could implement it the best that we could. So suppose we have a chain of restaurants, a franchise called The Coolest Restaurants. And we have a database, a central database that's in New York City. So that's our database. Under tables, we don't have a single table. However, the Coolest Restaurants franchise has a number of branches. So we have branches in Houston, Texas. We have branches in Chicago. We have branches in New York itself. But the central database is in New York City. So what happens at every branch at midnight when the store closes, the manager goes into Excel and enters some information into an Excel file called employee hours and then the date So in this case, this file is generated on what is supposed to be today's date, which is the 1st of January 2018. Let's double click on it and see what's on that file. What we have in there is the branch, which is a Houston branch, the title of the position of the different employees. So we have a waitress, a waiter, and a manager, the list of their names, the total hours they worked for what is supposed to be today's date, January 1st, 2018, and then a survey, which is as people eat in the restaurants, they have a little survey they fill out, so we get an average of their performance for that day. So this is Houston, Texas branch, the Excel sheet that they loaded. And so what we would like to do is be able to load that information on a daily basis to our database. So again, there's an Excel sheet that the branches leave out there for us. Our job is to develop an ETL, which means to extract this Excel file. In this case, we don't want to transform anything, but we would like to load it into a SQL Server database. Notice that when I come to save the Excel file, I have a number of options of file types. So my source could be saved into an Excel sheet, could be saved into a CSV, an XML, a web page, PDF, which is Adobe. There's a number of different formats that I can save my file in. For now, we're going to try something different than Excel within Excel, and we're going to choose a CSV file, which is a comma delimited or comma separated CSV, which stands for comma separated values, but the file is usually called a comma delimited file. So in this case, this is how we're going to save it. And this is the location of our file. So it's in the C drive. We created a folder called ETL imports, and that is the source. This is where the manager places the file every day. So on the second, we're going to have another file that's called employee hours 01/02/2018. On the third, we're going to have the third file. Our job now is to load this file into the database. The tool that we're using is called Microsoft SQL Server Intelligence Services, SSIS for short, or I'm sorry, Integration Services, correct. So we're going to go ahead and start by creating a new project. So the first time using Integration Services, we're just going to go fly through it. And then little by little, we're going to build it into a more complex. But the first time, we just want to build a simple sample that we could all follow it using SQL Server Integration Services, SSIS. So within Business Intelligence, we have the option of Integration Services. We're going to click on Integration Services Project. And here we have a number of options. There's a number of steps that eventually we're going to follow all of them, but for now we're going to stick with the first two, our control flow and our data flow. There isn't a lot we're doing control flow. We're more interested in moving our data, so the data flow. So while I'm in the control flow, I need to create a component called the data flow task, so I can move into the data flow and now move my data from my source to my destination. So I'm going to click on data flow, drag and drop. And if I double click, that should take me over to the data flow. So let's double click. And here I am. I need two things. I need a source, which is my Excel sheet, or in this case, the CSV file. So it's a file. And the destination, which is my SQL Server where my database resides. So let's go ahead and move our source, which is a flat file because we saved it as a CSV. Now I want to create a new file. So I can tell it exactly where that file is. So I'm going to browse for it. It's on my C drive. Under ETL imports. It was a CSV file, so I need to change the format to CSV. Employee hours, so that is my file. While we're at it, let's see if it formatted it correctly. So I can click on columns. Oh, wow. It read everything perfectly fine and fit it into the right place. So on the branch, we have Houston. Under the title, we have all of them. So my source is reading the comma delimited file correctly. So I'll go ahead and click OK for now. And I have my flat file. That's my source. But now this data is going to move into a destination. So I need to drag and drop my destination. which is SQL Server. And in there, it's a database. And my database name is Chilaxin, or the server name. And then the database name is The Coolest Restaurant, which is our franchise database. And data is moving from here to here, so I need to drag this line from here to here. But now I have an X, which means I have not configured my destination properly. What table is it going to go into? Is it a new table or an existing table? So let's go ahead and double click. It picked the database, but now the table, is this an existing table? I don't have an existing table, so I need a new table. If I click on new, based on the format of the file, SSIS will design a table structure that matches my data. So it has a create statement, which is create table, and the columns, and what it thinks is a good data type for the data that I have in there. The default name is OLADB destination, not the cool name that I'm looking for. I'm looking for something such as employee information. So I'll click yes. Now let's make sure our data is moving from one spot to the right spot, from the source to the destination. So I'm going to look at the mapping. And sure enough, this is my input data, my source, and this is my destination. And name information is going to name, branch is going to branch, title is going to title. All that information is going to the right place. As you can see, the mappings in my input columns, my source, and my destination columns. We'll click OK. And just to make sure that it works, we're going to click on Start. This right sign means, yes, we've read your file. 4 rows, which means the 4 rows have been loaded correctly, and I have the correct sign down here as well to my destination. I'm going to stop it. And if this statement is true, if I refresh my tables, I should be able to see that new table in there, which is the employee information. And if I do a right click and select the data, I should see 4 records in there, and sure enough, it did. So this is the most basic introduction and overview of what ETL is and what SSIS SQL Server Integration Services does for us. It basically picks up data from a source. In this case, we didn't have to transform it, but in some cases we need to transform it and load it into a destination, which we did this time. Thank you for joining this introductory session. We hope to see you in the next session.